Hello, friends. This is the third update on our vision and goals process we began as a church in September. We've talked about who are we now and what is important to us in this particular season of life as a church. And no big surprises there. Our identity and values are much the same as they were last time we checked in. We value each other. We value faith. We value inclusion and sustainability. You can look back at my first two reports for many words of explanation on those themes. And now it's time to shift from values to goals, with an eye towards the next step of creating action plans to achieve those goals. That's coming in the new year. Many thanks to all who participated in the town hall gatherings this fall, and all the other conversations throughout this process. I've done my best to listen and to reflect your thoughts in these reports. Some groups focus more on one or two of these areas than others, but I feel that all three of these goals are in line with the consensus. We will have further opportunities to consider and either adopt or reconsider these goals formally in the new year. Goal number 1, rebuild and strengthen our connections with each other. Many of us are not as connected as we would like to be, mainly due to the pandemic and the fullness of life. We want meaningful, genuine relationships with others in the church, especially across differences in age, background, and more. We want to be intentional about offering a variety of opportunities for presence and conversation, creating healthy spaces and points of connection for different personalities and communication styles. It's pretty simple. We want to be together more often. We want to catch up with those we haven't seen in a while. We want to know each other better, to know and be known on a deeper level. We want to be there for each other in the hard times and to celebrate the good times together. We want to feel like a community. Thankfully, a lot of this is already in progress as we've reemerged from pandemic lifestyles. Many of us linger before and after church for coffee time conversations. Small groups, formal and informal, have resumed meeting. Many of us have enjoyed social events like the canoe trip, the crokinole tournament, and the Christmas banquet. These times of reconnecting are so good, and we want more. We recognize that different people connect in different ways, so we want to provide a variety of activities and settings, from big groups to small groups to one-on-one visits, from social events to serious discussions to learning opportunities, and more. Likewise, we want to be intentional about connecting with others outside our usual demographics, across ages and backgrounds and occupations. And we are paying attention to making church a safe space for people who are vulnerable, again, in a variety of different ways. That includes those who have been hurt by church conflict. We have more work to do in restoring those relationships as well. It's tough to put a timeline to this goal. In some ways, we're just playing catch-up and rebuilding the relationships that were disrupted due to COVID. Hopefully, further lockdowns and distancing won't be necessary, and it will soon be relatively easy to maintain normal connections. And in other ways, some shifts have been happening for a long time already and seem pretty permanent, particularly around attendance patterns on Sunday mornings. More on that in a minute. When we can't take Sunday gatherings for granted any longer, we'll need to answer the question, what holds our church community together when we are all rarely together on Sunday morning for worship? Strengthening our connections isn't the whole answer to that question, but it's a step in that direction. Goal number 2, experiment with a variety of ways to worship. Church offers space for people to connect with God in heart, soul, mind, and strength, physicality, brain power, spirituality, and emotions. As our familiar Sunday morning patterns have been stressed by inconsistent attendance and growing demands on volunteers and staff, this feels like a good season to lean into Wildwood's rich history of trying different things and creating hospitable, imaginative spaces that draw in different people in different ways. How's our worship working for you? As volunteers and staff, we put a ton of time and effort into crafting meaningful Sunday morning worship services. And for most of our church's existence, those were the centerpiece of our congregational life. That was the space where we all came together to speak with and hear from God, and to hear from and speak with each other. As times have changed in lots of different ways, our Sunday gatherings have become less of a focal point. Many of us attend less frequently than we used to. A significant number of us only come rarely, if ever. Part of that is related to the pandemic, but it's also part of long-term trends that extend way beyond our congregation. Many of us grieve those absences. The empty chairs speak loudly each week to those who are here. And some of us who are more absent than we used to be lament that as well. We feel the loss of what was, and we wish we could be more connected with God and with each other. Yet at the same time, there are good, valid reasons for people to come to church less often. Many of us are so busy. Some of us appreciate the freedom from obligation offered by the pandemic experience. Some of us have found other delightful avenues for renewing our spirits. And some of us have found that the patterns of worship at Wildwood no longer resonate with us the way they once did. All of this presents us with a choice. Do we carry on with the familiar forms of worship that have worked for so long, or do we take this opportunity to change things up, to experiment with some different kinds of Sunday morning gatherings? That's a genuine question. Obviously, what we're doing continues to work for many of us. The consistency and familiarity is important to us, particularly in an unsettled world. Maybe the best thing is to keep doing these things that sustain us and hope that others will be drawn back in over time. It might be possible. However, what I'm hearing from those who have joined in these vision and goals conversations is that it's time to make some changes. We're not sure yet what those might be, but there are lots of ideas out there. Mostly, we're recognizing that our worship patterns are fairly narrow, and we'd all benefit from expanding our range of what counts as worship. We do want to connect with our whole selves, body, soul, mind, and spirit. For example, I'm hearing interest in more flexible open spaces, a little less sitting quietly, a little more freedom to move around or keep your hands busy or engage in conversation. I'm hearing a desire for hospitality and creativity, a little less listening, a little more participating and sharing. And I'm hearing a call for more variety from week to week. Experiences like God in the Garden or God on the Farm or visiting choirs or dramas or guided meditations, each of those invite us to engage in ways that work for different people and different parts of our whole selves. Perhaps we will stumble onto new patterns that will entice some of those who have been absent to come back so that our congregation feels full and vibrant once again. Or maybe we will create new ways of feeling full and vibrant within a smaller group, along with new ways of connecting with each other and with God beyond the traditional Sunday morning time slot. The creative side of my brain loves this conversation and is already pulling together new and old ideas. And also, I'm very invested in the familiar patterns, so I hear those who are reluctant to change too broadly. Let's keep talking. Goal number 3, renovate our structures to better serve our values. Changes abound in our world. We feel that reality deeply. Yet the people, rhythms, and faith we hold dear remain much the same. As a church organization, what in our structures, patterns, and expectations needs to change to help us remain viable and vibrant in the long term? What tools and skills might we develop to meet our needs and stay faithful to who God has called us to be? And how do we ease those transitions for those for whom change is difficult? There have been a number of anxious moments and fearful conversations in our church this year. Deficit was the financial buzzword of the year, although in the end we were able to turn our budget shortfall into a surplus. Thanks be to God, thanks to your generosity, and thanks to the careful cost-cutting of those managing church budgets. Volunteers were sometimes in short supply, with more open positions and jobs to do than people with the time and energy to do them. Although again, thanks to your generosity, and we covered all the things that needed to be covered by a wide range of talented and committed volunteers. Staff uncertainties of varying degrees complicated many things, from the incomplete hiring process of 2021 to personal and health complications for me and for Eileen, on top of the ongoing questions of how much staff time do we need, how much can we afford, and what exactly do we want our staff to be focused on. And the ongoing realities of aging as a church continue to grow. with more seniors than youngsters among us, no matter how you define those categories. You probably know the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That seems fitting for our church as an organization right now. There are some things we can do about some of the things on that list. And there are some places where we can't change the realities, but we can shape our responses to them. And there are some where we will simply need to let go and accept in order to focus on other areas. This feels like a time for reflection on and review of our processes, positions, and expectations, our expenses and our income, our volunteer positions, our programs and plans for the future. The value is sustainability. We want our church to thrive for the long term. That requires attention and intention, and perhaps reorganization, and much wisdom. So 3 goals have risen to the surface in our discernment. Rebuild and strengthen our connections with each other, experiment with a variety of ways to worship, renovate our structures to better serve our values. Again, these are my best effort to reflect back what I've been hearing from you all. What is missing? What could be clarified or worded differently? What fresh thoughts have emerged in the meantime? Let me know. The plan is to discuss and formally adopt the final version of our vision and goals at the January 28 semi-annual meeting. And there will also be opportunities along the way to further discuss these goals and to begin to plan some action steps towards meeting them. I look forward to the conversation.